Welcome back to The Big Skinny with Lou Basenese. I am going to jump right into our next conversation because for me, this is one of the most compelling and interesting interviews that we could have on the heels of being investors early in Core Scientific and seeing the CoreWeave acquisition happen. Whether that ends up being consummated fully is up for grabs. But then we were in TeraWulf, which led me to look for other ways to play this trend and immediately led me to the work of Mike Alfred, who is so gracious to share his thoughts. He's a director at IREN Limited, who's another player in the Bitcoin pivoting to HPC space. So Mike, welcome to The Big Skinny. I really appreciate you making time for us lowly Main Street investors that don't fully understand, but you've been educating us, so appreciate the efforts.
Absolutely. Good to be here.
Yeah, so I want to jump right into it. What do you think people are missing the most about this trend where we're seeing that the Bitcoin miners that had the foresight to secure energy up front and now pivot, or maybe pivot's not the right word, add HPC to their business model? What do you think everyone's missing that they haven't figured out yet? Because you're getting a lot of hate and doubters, just like I have on X, when you start talking bullishly about these names.
The haters have largely disappeared, candidly. They've mostly been silenced. It turns out when you're right in markets, the haters sort of vanish and disappear. But look, I did get a lot more hate 2.5, 3 years ago when IREN was $1.
Yeah.
And I went to the board at that time and I said, I'd like to buy 2 to 3 million shares. And they looked at me like, you're the only person coming to us saying you want to do that.
Right.
And I had talked to 30 other so-called Bitcoin miners in the sort of period leading up to joining their board. So I was very aware of the quality, the relative quality of the assets of each of those companies, as well as the management teams. And I viewed IREN as a top 2 or 3 company in this ecosystem. And I had a thesis more than 3 years ago now that the power and infrastructure would end up being more valuable as an option on future compute categories, even beyond Bitcoin, than it even was for Bitcoin. Of course, at the same time, Bitcoin was 16K. Right. And I had a view that Bitcoin was going to 200 to 300K. And so I thought there were many ways to win. And basically you were buying, I don't know, 5 to 10 cents of balance sheet value. You're paying 5 to 10 cents for $1 of value. And as a value investor operating with a margin of safety, that's where you want to start.
Right.
If you get this sort of parabolic upside later, great. But my view about markets generally, the way I invest is I try not to lose money. And I think if you don't
Warren Buffett rules, right? Rule number 1 is make money. Yeah. Rule number 2, or don't lose money. Yeah. Rule number 2 is
you underwrite to not lose money, you end up making plenty of money over long periods of time, right? And
so let me ask you, you've been tremendously right. IREN at $1, now closed at a new all-time high today, I believe, as well. And this seems to be a trend every day. We're closing at new highs. Has the thesis changed in any way for you, or has it just gotten better? As I look at it, it looks the case for, I think one of your tweets was like, look, every last bit, every megawatt of power is going to be consumed by this trend. Is that how you see it? I mean, and explain that a little bit to people that might not be thinking in that framework.
That's part of why Bitfarms and Hive and some of these secondary and kind of tertiary players are also going up, because people have figured out that as long as you have contiguous megawatts that are available now, right? So this nuclear trend, great. There's a lot of other trends in energy that might come to fruition over the next 5 years, but people need power right now. Like if you're an AI lab and you're trying to compete with ChatGPT and Perplexity and Grok and Gemini, right, and all of these different chatbots, like you need a lot of power right now, and nobody has it.
Yep.
So the thing that's actually happening is that like people thought NVIDIA chips were the gating factor, right? So they thought, oh, they're going to run out of the newest generation chips. That's not actually the issue. We can get chips. There's just nowhere to plug them in. There isn't enough high quality infrastructure, particularly not on the liquid cooled, like latest generation side. So you can run old chips air cooled, but it's much harder to find capacity at large scale for the liquid cooled chips. And that's what you need in order to do inference, right? The sort of most advanced forms of AI application development.
Right.
So look, I think it's, in terms of where we are in the journey, I think it's second inning, maybe third inning. Like we're in transition from this being a deeply sort of contrarian view to a deeply popular view, but most of the world's still not paying attention.
Yeah, and look, I count myself in that. I was in that late to the party in terms of Bitcoin and recognizing the true value of that. I will say it, I'll paint myself with the brush. I fell into the traditional finance trap and have now seen the light. But I'm also seeing the light here too. You made a comment a little bit earlier about you did all the work on the other players in the space. I think when I look at IREN, what stands out to me that's unique is 100% renewable power supply, right? Whether it's through nuclear or renewable credits. But more importantly, correct me if I'm wrong, they're leasing the chips as opposed to expending for the capital expenditures so that they can constantly be upgraded on the forefront. So what other things differentiate? Is that accurate? And what other things differentiate them from the rest of the pack that make them your biggest and smartest play on this trend?
So look, I'm on the board, so I'm highly biased. And Jim Chanos, if he was here, he would call me out on saying positive things without IREN, without giving every single disclosure possible. So I'm going back and forth with him for some reason. He used to be a billionaire. He's not anymore, maybe because he shorted too many stocks.
It's kind of hard to keep being a billionaire when you keep shorting everything when the market's ripping up and to the right. So
I feel bad for him. He used to have a beautiful Hampton house and like a place in Midtown Manhattan. It's like $50 million, and it's all gone now.
Yeah,
he's probably going to short these stocks next.
It's like feeling bad for Andrew Left. I don't feel bad for him either at Citron. So I mean, look, we all play silly games and get silly prizes sometimes. So
100%. So in terms of IREN, look, the team is world class. These are infrastructure developers, not people who pivoted accidentally into data center development or pivoted accidentally into Bitcoin, unlike sort of a lot of other people in the space that used to do pharmaceuticals or patent trolling or God knows what else, right? Like these guys started the business to be the best infrastructure developer in the world, and they've hit all their targets. So they say, hey, we're going to hit 10 exahash. They hit it. They said 20 exahash. This is on the Bitcoin mining side. 50 exahash. They hit it on time, under budget. No one else has done that in the history of the space. They were the fastest growing Bitcoin sort of developer in the history of the space, and they're still probably the most profitable today in terms of GAAP final accounting, right? So put that aside. We go to the GPU business. Nobody else in the space who's pivoting from Bitcoin mining into AI is running their own cloud with any scale. Everybody else has sort of punted and said, look, we're going to co-locate. We're going to sell away essentially our power to a hyperscaler and let them monetize that power with someone else. And IREN has said, no, we have the belief that we can offer a really high quality bare metal service directly to hyperscalers where we just provide the fully integrated platform. We basically give you the compute over the wall and we let you do what you want after that. But like, we're not going to let you sort of intermediate between us and the end customer. And so look, you have to have confidence to do that. You have to have a lot of infrastructure chops. You got to have access to capital. You got to have a relationship with NVIDIA, et cetera. Like it's possible other people will be able to follow IREN, but as of right now, IREN is one of the only fully integrated global players who can offer like the full stack to a customer direct. Like Tesla is a good example of a company that, and XAI, that built a really wonderful AI data center, but they're using it primarily for internal use.
Right, and Tesla that's been a hallmark of them, vertical integration. When you look at their building of the electric vehicle, it's not surprising they're doing the same approach in AI, but help me understand here too, just a little bit. So I think it's important to note for the listeners that there's a lot of people that are pivoting to Bitcoin or to hyperscaling that have no experience there. It's very rare in public markets for companies that have management teams that have deep experience that actually execute and do what they say they're going to do, under promise and over deliver. So it's encouraging to see that. Where do you see this stock going though? So I love some of your comments on X where you're like calling out the kid analysts and the chart squigglers. And there was one recently that was saying, oh, this thing is overdue for a reversal. What's your view? You're buy and hold almost for forever on this. How high do you think prices can go as everyone wakes up to this valuation here?
So somebody asked me that earlier today, and basically my answer was, if I summarize, is it just depends on how well the company executes on the cloud business. Like look at CoreWeave, look at Nebius, look at some of these other companies who I actually, even though they're currently valued more highly than IREN, they don't have the same natural competitive advantages that IREN has. Those may not be well understood by the market yet, but that's your alpha.
Right.
In the long run, it's sort of uncapped. It sort of depends on how big does the AI data center market get, and then what percentage of that does IREN get. I would not rule out, again, I'm on the board and I have to avoid like recommending the stock directly or telling you to buy it or giving a specific price target. But like, I would love to be around when it's 100 billion or 500 billion or even $1 trillion company. There aren't too many spaces like this where you're basically seeing the convergence of two of the world's most important megatrends of all time, Bitcoin and AI. It's converging at the data center on the energy layer. And IREN has not only a huge portfolio today of top-notch sites with a lot of power with interconnect agreements, we also have a portfolio of sites that haven't been announced. And largely they're not announced because the company's super conservative about only announcing those sites when those interconnect agreements are locked in. So the idea that like this is a company standing in place where you can just value it as a sum of the parts, I think that's going to end up being wrong. We could probably grow a lot more than most people think, but I would caution people, like at any given moment in time, as things get frothy, as it's the number one on the IBD list, right? As traders are piling into it, that's a totally, like, I don't invest around those things. I don't trade the stock, right? There would be a form for SEC filing if I was selling the stock, right? And so like you won't see me buying or selling very frequently, if ever, right? And so I'm largely immune to that, but I would just caution people listening that even though I love the company and I think it could go a lot further, like you do have to be careful about periods of time where, you know, the market in general gets frothy.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate the disclaimers there. I was investment banking, FINRA licensed, and have to do media appearances and have a disclaimer this long before you can actually say anything bullish. So I appreciate the predicament you're in. One thing, do you think? I mean, we've been watching some of these other names like Nebius, TeraWulf. They all practically, you know, went up 50% or 100% on their deal announcements, right? Do you think at some point after IREN or maybe a Cipher Mining announces a big deal that the market stops giving as much of a valuation bump for each of the deals made? Do you think there's a decrease in that premium valuation, or do you think it kind of, for the next 2 to 3 years, it continues to just be re-rated based upon each deal?
You're asking me to predict the future of sentiment, right? And look, I think
how much value is assigned to execution, I guess, is the first big deal more important, or do you see that each successive one are just as important in laying down
the answer?
Thesis?
The real answer is it depends, right? So does Cipher sign a deal directly with Microsoft or Meta or Oracle, or do they do a deal that looks like the previous deals, which are basically to another neocloud? Right. Does Cipher announce eventually that they're going to do their own neocloud following the IREN model? That would trigger a re-rating across their whole portfolio because the economics of the neocloud business are different than the economics of co-location. And if you have the guts to do the neocloud business and you do it successfully, you potentially have a much larger long-term upside. So it remains to be seen. What I will tell you is that Cipher has one of the best site portfolios and one of the best management teams in the space. And again, having evaluated 30 or 40 of those companies in a short period of time in 2021, where I hired a guy from Blackstone and we literally talked to every single player in the space. That's what led me near the bottom in 2022 to call out Cipher and IREN in particular as two of the best players in this space. And if you go back to that time, by the way, in December 2022, nobody was talking about IREN.
No,
nobody was talking about Cipher. They were talking about Mara and Riot.
Yep.
And maybe HUD 8. And so I'll remind people that while this is obvious now, that these have been the best performers this cycle, the only way you would have known that is if you did the work back then, three years ago, right? And you had met the teams, you had studied the sites, you went to visit the sites. And so what happens from here, who knows? But I would continue to bet on the best teams. I would resist the urge to speculate just because someone has a reasonable chance because they're so compressed of going up. Like that doesn't mean that's a stock you want to own for 3 or 4 years. I would only go into the names where you can trust the management teams are aligned with shareholders and are interested in actually delivering shareholder returns over time.
Yeah. Listen, you said something that really resonates with me because I came into Morgan Stanley's private client group and realized the only place where I can have alpha as an individual is really in the small and micro cap names where there's inefficiency, where if you do the work, you may be early, you can see the rewards. I want to segue that into just before we let you go. You've also made comments that you really see a boom coming for small caps, right? And not just these names that are levered to these two mega trends coinciding at the same time. Why do you see small caps as really the next prime position for, you know, a rally, since they've underperformed large caps for so long, for about 12 years running? And look, I'm a believer in small caps, so I'm not coming at you from a pessimist. I just want to hear another believer's viewpoint on it.
Yeah, I think there's a bunch of different triggers for that. One is that small caps are more exposed to the sort of economic factors locally in the US, right? And so like you look at what's worked over the last 5-10 years, it's like mega cap tech with global exposure, like dominant platform companies, and those companies are not in the small cap index. What's changing now, a couple things. One is those mega cap companies have run so far that even though they're great businesses, they're largely pricing in like 10 more years of basically perfection. And so what I think is going to happen is there's going to be some rotation around valuation. There's going to be some rotation around mean reversion. And then, of course, the falling rate environment definitely benefits companies with more debt. And so on average, the small cap index companies have more debt than those big mega cap companies that are printing so much money that they largely don't even need the debt markets. They use the debt markets, but they really don't need it. Small cap companies are much more economically sensitive. So I think we're overdue for that. Like I think just from a timing standpoint, like I'd be looking between now and the end of the year for a major breakout in the IWM.
We've come close a few times.
And I think it'll correspond with a breakout in Bitcoin over 125, 130, a breakout in Ethereum over 5,000, and a breakout in some of these names like IREN and Cipher. We're in that breakout now, but like a company like Cipher hasn't even broken out to all-time highs yet. So like I think it'll probably cross 14 or 15 right around the time that Bitcoin's breaking 124, Ethereum's breaking 5, and IWM's breaking like 242, right? Like I think those are kind of the targets, and it'll probably also correspond with the DXY dollar index breaking down to 95, 92, something like that.
Yeah, listen, from your mouth to the market's ears, because I'm invested in IREN and in Cypher. I'm a long-term believer in the small caps, and it's coiled. It's ready to happen, and I agree with you completely. And if you look at the earnings growth rates too, in the next 2 years, the aggregate earnings growth expected for those profitable small caps is expected to be 3 or 4x the large cap. So there's the fundamental driver of it as well that you won't get out of whack on terms of PE ratios. One quick question here for you. Cypher and IREN re-rate has happened before. First deals haven't even taken place. I can't decipher that. So anyway, Mike, I want to thank you. You walk into a difficult situation because you are on the board, so that gives you a lot of restrictions, but you share freely your research and the fact that you've done the work and you're trying to help others understand what's coming, even still, for IREN in the crypto space. And for that, I thank you, because you've helped educate me, and I know you've helped educate people on this podcast. So thank you again for joining us.
Thank you, Lou. Appreciate it.
All right. Take care.